I used to think family was everything. Growing up in a small town nestled between sprawling fields and dense woods, the notion was instilled in me like the air I breathed. My parents, while not perfect, imbued their ideals into me: loyalty, support, and standing by loved ones no matter what. But as I sat on the edge of my bed, my laptop open to a blank document titled, "Is It Wrong of Me?" I began to wonder if I had been placed on a misguided track, or if perhaps I was merely discovering my own rail. I'll take you back a few weeks. It was Wednesday evening, if memory serves me right, and I was in my downtown apartment of the bustling city of Chicago, a long way from home and where I had built my own life. My friend and co-worker, Tasha, had invited me to a gallery showing where her artist friend was unveiling a series of incredible, eclectic paintings. I had no idea how much I needed that night of color and creativity until I stood there, surrounded by vibrant hues splattered across canvas, drinks in hand, laughter echoing around me. It was there, in that gallery, that I saw him, Elliot. He was a friend of a friend, and I had seen him at work gatherings but never engaged much with him. That night, something about the way he stood, water bottle in hand, looking intently at a painting of a sun-drenched field, pulled me in. Before I knew it, we were conversing. His thoughts on art were lucid, quirky, and surprisingly passionate, given his day job in finance. We exchanged thoughts about life, dreams, and fears, and in that moment, I felt a connection click into place, like the final piece of a jigsaw puzzle, right there, amid the vibrant paintings and bustling crowd. Fast forward a few weeks, and I found myself at a crossroads. My parents had called me, with my dad's voice heavy with concern. My younger sister, Jamie, had gotten herself into some trouble, and I was being pressured to come home. Jamie had always been the wild card. She was bright, talented, yet stubborn, as a mule. At 22, she had dropped out of college, taken to a digital nomad lifestyle, and was now in a bit of a messy situation. She had gotten involved with the wrong people and found herself wrapped up in a web of debts from gambling and bad choices. "I don't understand how she could have done this," my mother lamented over the phone. "You're the only one she listens to, Lucy. Please come home." As the eldest, I had always felt responsible for my sister. Growing up, I was the protector, the one who picked up the pieces whenever she threw a tantrum or chased after reckless dreams. But now I was also trying to protect my own life, my new job, and, oddly enough, the burgeoning relationship I was developing with Elliot, and old promises of loyalty to family began to clash with my desire for self-preservation. "We've talked about this," I said to my mother, my voice shaking slightly. "You need to trust her to figure things out. She can't learn if we keep rescuing her." "Lucy, this is serious. We can't just leave her to flounder. She needs you." "I need to establish my own life too, Mom. I'll check in on her." "But I can't just abandon everything I've built here," I replied. Hanging up the phone, I felt the weight of their expectations pressing down on me like an anchor. Eventually, I decided to go back home for the weekend, a decision that gnawed at my insides. I felt torn between my loyalty to Jamie and my commitment to my own path. I stewed in my emotions, contemplating how I could help my sister without sacrificing the strides I had made in my own life. The next day, I met Elliot for a casual dinner. We had been texting almost daily since the gallery, and he had become a delightful presence in my otherwise hectic life. The kitchen of my apartment smelled of sautéed garlic and white wine, and as I poured us glasses of the latter, I didn't know how to bring up the situation with Jamie. "Everything all right?" he asked, his eyes searching mine with concern. "Yeah, just a family thing," I replied, trying to muster a smile. "Talk to me," he urged gently. I took a breath, wishing I could spin a whimsical tale instead of the messy reality I was living. "It's about my sister. She's not in a great spot right now." As I explained the circumstances, I braced myself for his judgment, or worse, pity. But to my relief, he listened intently, never interjecting with unsolicited advice. "Sounds tough," he finally said when I finished. "But my gut tells me you can't save everyone, Lucy. You know that the best thing might be to let her face the consequences? I nodded, feeling a rush of clarity. Elliot was right, but that didn't erase the guilt I was feeling. It only made it more evident. I finished my wine, relieved to have shared the burden, grateful to have someone in my corner supporting my autonomy while respecting my family's ties. That weekend, as I drove the familiar route back home, the landscape seemed to flash by in a blur of color. Green fields, yellow sunflowers, and the wooden fence posts made me nostalgic. Memories of childhood laughter echoed in my mind. I arrived amid a torrent of family emotions. Jamie was home, but instead of the bubbly, free-spirited sister I knew, she looked worn, weary, and anxious. Faces were drawn tight around the dinner table as her complaints and excuses tumbled out. The room was heavy with the silence of disappointment. "Everyone's done everything for you, Jamie," I finally interjected, unable to remain a passive observer any longer. "You can't keep running away or playing the victim. You must take responsibility for your actions." My words hung in the air like a powder keg waiting to explode. The look of shock on her face was almost painful. "What do you know? You left. You don't even live here anymore." Before I could respond, our mom was there. "Lucy is right, Jamie. We're here and we want to help, but you need to meet us halfway. You can't expect us to fix this mess. For you." The pressure in the room intensified and the conversation quickly derailed. Jamie stormed off and our mom followed to soothe her while Dad and I sat together in the simmering tension. Hours later, when no one else was around, Jamie stormed back into the living room, her anger palpable. "What gives you the right to come back here and judge me? You have your life figured out. You're the one who left." I felt my heart racing, my voice steady but uncertain. "I came back because I care about you. I'm here because I want you to be better, Jamie. But you need to meet me there." "You've been lost for so long," I paused, choosing my words carefully before adding, "You're better than this." And there it was. The wall I had seen her build for years began to crack as she looked me in the eye, tears pooling there. She was still a tempest, but perhaps beneath that storm was a flicker of the girl I had always loved. "Maybe I don't know what better looks like," she whispered, her voice barely a tremor. "I just feel stuck." The conversation shifted. We talked, really talked, and that night, as we both curled into our beds, I realized we had a long way to go. But she was willing to try, and for the first time in years I felt we were working toward the same goal. I returned to Chicago revitalized, my memory rich with the taste of hope. With each passing day, I kept in touch with Jamie, texting, calling, and checking in. My connection with Elliot grew too as we shared laughter, meals, and dreams of a future that felt brighter with each sunset. But that clarity was shadowed in the background like a shroud. My parents' tendency to place family above all else lingered like a ghost. I had always considered that significant, but I now felt that the line between loyalty and drowning was thin, a thread that could snap at any moment. I found myself contemplating whether choosing oneself was selfish or smart. Maybe it was both. And perhaps I had been intense about my commitment to Jamie and my family for too long, but I was learning to understand that there wasn't a clear-cut answer. It was complicated and messy, just like life. Finally, during one of our calls, Jamie said something that stuck with me. "You're my sister, and I adore you, Lucy. But don't forget, you matter too. Your life, your happiness, your decisions, they come first." Her words lit a fire in me. For years I had fallen into the pattern of suppressing my desires for my family's sake, believing that loyalty was synonymous with sacrifice. I had been blind to my own needs, afraid that loving myself meant loving them less, but I was beginning to realize it meant loving them differently. As I typed my post for that anonymous community online later that evening, I reflected on my journey. Thus far, I began, I am the eldest daughter in a family that has historically placed a heavy burden of loyalty on me. Recently, I had to decide between staying in the town where my family is struggling with my younger sister's issues, or remaining in Chicago where I feel I've started to build a life and relationship of my own. I paused to consider my words, my pulse quickening. I opted to establish boundaries while providing emotional support, but it feels like an insurmountable dilemma at times. Am I wrong for choosing my path and trying to break free from the expectations that have weighed me down? As I hit submit, a wave of relief washed over me. This was a step into self-discovery, a word that created ripples through my life. And, as I lay back in bed, my heart in sync with the rhythm of resolve, I felt reconciled with the truth. One could navigate love and family while still remaining true to oneself. Self-discovery seemed like an ongoing journey intertwined with the complexities of family ties, each threading through the other, carefully beautiful and tragically flawed. Yet in that very moment, I understood that my path forward could be both my own and shared with those I loved. I was young, still learning, but finally at peace with the idea that I could both support my sister and live my life fully for myself. Aita for planning a surprise wedding. Without my best friend's permission, every story has a beginning, and mine starts on a chilly autumn evening when I hosted a gathering at my small apartment. Leaves danced lazily down from the trees outside, and the faint aroma of pumpkin spice from the candles filled the space, accompanied by the muffled laughter of my friends. I knew that the next few weeks would be crucial not just for me, but for my best friend, Sophie, who had the tendency to overthink everything in her life, especially when it came to love. The gathering, however, quickly turned into something I had never anticipated. As we sat around my living room, someone brought up Sophie's boyfriend, Kyle, who in the most playful yet suggestive manner proposed the idea of a surprise wedding. "Wouldn't that be grand?" he joked. "Sophie can't plan a simple dinner, let alone a wedding." The laughter that followed was a soothing balm in the room, but in the back of my mind, a flicker of an idea ignited. What if I actually planned a surprise wedding for Sophie? Maybe it would help her stop dragging her heels about their relationship. Maybe it would be the nudge she needed to recognize how beautiful and deserving of love she really was. As the night wore on, the plan crystallized in my head. I told myself then that the idea was just a fleeting thought. But by the time I woke up the next day, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was something I needed to pursue. Sophie had always been my partner in crime. We'd navigated the rocky roads of adolescence, full of heartbreaks and triumphs. We had talked for countless hours about our future, a future that always included love more profound than recounted tales of dating disasters. Ignoring her occasional doubts about her relationship with Kyle, I jumped headfirst into planning. I contacted Kyle, figuring he'd be on board. After a cup of coffee and an in-depth chatter, I boldly asked him if he'd be willing to go along with a secret wedding. To my delight, he was all in. He loved Sophie too much to let her stress over every detail of the day. But here was where my worry began. The closer the wedding date got, the more I wondered how Sophie would react. I convinced myself that she'd be thrilled. Let's face it, who wouldn't want a surprise wedding? But little voices in my head piped up, reminding me that planning an event so monumental without someone's consent might be crossing a line. Despite the nagging doubts, I pressed on with enthusiastic ambition. In the following weeks, it seemed as if everything was perfectly aligning. I reserved a quaint little chapel near the park where Sophie and I had spent many afternoons while we were supposed to be studying. The decorations were simple yet elegant, strings of fairy lights draped artistically along the pews and with roses gently filling the space's natural beauty. Kyle helped me assemble a small guest list, just close family and friends eager to celebrate the occasion. As I sat one afternoon surrounded by an array of invitations, which I had lovingly personalized, I noticed the looming shadow of guilt creeping in. Was I being selfish? By acting as the orchestrator of this surprise, was I derailing her autonomy? Sophie had always been fiercely independent, and this plan could be perceived as forcing her into something she wasn't ready for. I struggled internally, replaying every moment we had shared, freezing on the idea that I could become the villain in our story. It wasn't until our mutual friend Rachel came over for one of our casual dinners that the weight of my decision truly pressed upon me. As we talked and laughed, she mentioned how current social media ideals romanticized proposals and weddings. It hit me like a lightning bolt. Who was I to disrupt that journey? Shouldn't it be Sophie's dream? The weight crushed me, and my stomach twisted in knots. I feel as if I might be making a monumental mistake, I confessed to Rachel. I told her about my plan and the excitement and anxiety that had mingled within me. As she listened, the frown on her face deepened, and a deep silence swept through the room. "You know her better than I do," she finally said, her voice steady but contemplative. "But wouldn't it be better just to talk to her about it? Surprises can be beautiful, but in this case, it might be better to let her in. What if she hates it? What if she feels tricked?" That moment set me into a spiral. I had come too far to back out now, yet Rachel's words echoed in my mind like an alarm bell ringing through a dense fog. What if I became an antagonist in what was supposed to be one of the most cherished moments of Sophie's life? Days turned into sleepless nights as I weighed my options. Should I call it off, or should I carry through, hoping for the best with my surreptitious nuptials? On one hand, I felt like a guardian angel, planning a surprise wedding to show Sophie how treasured she was. On the other hand, my fear of violating her trust loomed large, but when the fateful evening arrived, I ignored my growing conscience, and instead basked in the thrill of my audacious plan. Sophie had made plans for dinner with her parents, an elaborate ruse concocted by Kyle and me, whose falsehoods bolstered my delusion that everything was on track. After spending the day decorating and receiving guests, I finally stood anxiously outside the quaint chapel. As Sophie approached her partner in crime, Kyle whispered reassuring words, steadied by his conviction in our secret. It was difficult to shake off my doubts, but seeing the array of smiles waiting inside filled me with electric anticipation. The moment Sophie stepped into the chapel, her eyes widened. It was magical for just a second. It seemed as though the universe had choreographed this moment just for her. The reaction was immediate, a gasp followed by tears forming in her eyes. I braced for her expression to morph into joy, but it didn't. Confusion clouded her face as she searched the chapel for answers, for clarity. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice shaking. The guests watched in complete silence as Kyle stepped forward, wrapping a supportive arm around her shoulders. I held my breath, dread settling like lead in my stomach. "Sophie," Kyle started, "we wanted to give you the kind of day you could have only dreamed about." "Why would you do this?" Her voice trembled, confusion giving way to an anger I had never witnessed before. "Why didn't you just ask me? You think you know what I want? Did you ever stop to think that maybe, because you always put yourself last?" I interrupted, my heart racing, the guilt boiling over. I thought this was what you needed. I thought I was helping." Her expression shifted from confusion to hurt, as she attempted to assess the wreck of an evening that was spun from my intentions and dashed against reality. "But it's not your place to assume," she hurtled back, the momentum behind her, words nearly bowling me over. In that twitching silence, I felt something crack deep within me, a realization that this had not been an act of love, but instead one of utter selfishness. It was the worst kind of betrayal, betraying her trust and, most importantly, her ability to choose for herself. "I'm sorry," I barely whispered, feeling small against her distress. "I thought—" "But you didn't think," she shouted, the anger dissipating into heartbreak, her eyes glistening with betrayal. "This isn't a fairy tale, Grace. This is my life, and I deserve to make my own choices." Her pain pierced through the thin veil of my misconstrued intentions. Even though I had dreamed of creating a perfect moment for her, it had backfired immensely. I had wrested her autonomy away, tossing our lifelong friendship into murky waters. Sophie stormed out of the chapel, hands shaking, wet with tears, leaving me standing amidst the remnants of my crumbled plan. Guests who moments earlier wore smiles shifted awkwardly, unsure of what they had just witnessed unfold. A sudden realization, lighter yet heavier than the air, settled over me. I had become a villain in what was meant to be a love story. I had imposed my will upon my friend, embellishing her life without her consent. In the aftermath, I sat in silence, suddenly stripped of my excitement. The chaos had echoed long enough, unraveling deeper layers of human connection. Trust, respect, and agency. Days turned into weeks without her. I texted and called, hoping to elicit some forgiveness, or even just a conversation, but silence trailed behind her, leading me to dive deeper into regret. Then one day Sophie appeared at my door, her expression neutral, devoid of the anger that had marked her emotions that fateful evening. I let her in, the air thick with unspoken words, the weight of vulnerability settling between us like an uncomfortable guest. "I don't hate you," she finally said, exhaling softly, "but you broke something important. It feels like our whole dynamic has changed, and I don't know how to fix it." I searched her eyes, hunting for that flicker of the bond we used to have. "I never wanted to hurt you," I murmured, guilt choking my words. "And yet, you did." Her voice quivered, and I felt the tears welling in my eyes, desperate to fix what had been lost. "I loved the idea of surprise and the thrill of spontaneity, just not in this way. It stripped away my choices." That moment marked the beginning of a journey to mend our fractured friendship. Slowly, as days turned into conversations, and conversations turned into contemplations, we dismantled the pieces of our friendship, hand in hand, acknowledging both my faults and hers. I learned that surprises were only beautiful when rooted in partnership and mutual respect. Then, one night under the twinkling stars as we talked under the soft glow of string lights hanging above, I finally mustered the courage to ask what I dreaded to hear. "Do you think we can still find our way back?" Her silence was a comforting embrace, an assurance that even if the journey back would be long, it would be together. And that beat, the gentle rhythm of healing, reverberated like the steady pulse of hope. In that darkest moment of my life, I finally understood an invaluable lesson. Some dreams need to be run by their dreamers, and the fragility of human connection is something to nurture with care. Because at the end of the day, love isn't just about grand gestures. It's also about listening, understanding, and allowing others the freedom to choose. So, Aita, the family reunion. Unexpected, I didn't expect the family reunion to end the way it did. I thought I would show up, eat some potluck food, and endure the typical questions about my job and love life. I wasn't ready for the revelation that would change everything for me and my family dynamics. Let me backtrack a bit. My name is Kelly, I'm 31 years old, and I work as an elementary school teacher. I've always been the black sheep in my family, an artist in a group of engineers, a free spirit in a sphere of perfectionists. My family, particularly my dad, has always had a clear vision of what success looks like. A good job, a stable marriage, and kids. I love my family, but it always felt like I was living in a world that wasn't really my own. When the invitation for the reunion came, tucked neatly with a fridge magnet showcasing a cartoon version of our family crest, I rolled my eyes. Summertime. Gatherings always felt like tedious obligations filled with small talk and unasked for advice. However, my younger brother, Mark, was going to be in town. He had recently moved away to work for a tech startup, and I couldn't say no to seeing him again. On the day of the reunion, anxiety churned in my stomach like a wild tornado. I prepped a quiche with fresh vegetables from my garden, hoping that my contribution would earn me a few brownie points. As I pulled into the park where we always held these gatherings, a familiar wave of childhood memories washed over me. I could picture my dad's face beaming as he claimed the grill, or my mom rallying us for a game of frisbee. The moment I stepped out of my car, I was greeted with the chaos of laughter and the smell of grilled burgers. It was a cacophony that reminded me why I still came, despite my reservations. The day unfolded in the usual way, with obligatory hugs, jabs about my single status, and the passage of the year recounted in a running commentary from my mother. Everything felt familiar, and yet so different. As the sun began to dip low in the sky, casting a golden hue across the park, Mark pulled me aside. "I need to talk to you. It's important." "What's up?" I said, half smiling at him. My heart fluttering a little, he took a deep breath. "I think you should sit down for this." That instantly put me on edge. "Seriously? Just tell me. Is it about your work? Did you get a promotion?" With a serious look that contradicted my teasing tone, he said, "No, it's about Mom and Dad." The cheer of the party began to dissolve around me, fading like the distant sound of a harmonica. What about them? Mark hesitated, searching my eyes for something I couldn't define. "They're getting a divorce," I blinked, my breath caught in my throat. "What? No, they can't. They've been married for over 30 years?" "I know. But things haven't been good for a while. They're unhappy, and they've decided to separate." The weight of the news hung between us, heavy and unyielding. I felt the ground shift. Just that morning, I'd walked into the gathering with my usual sense of detachment, but this was the one detail I couldn't ignore. "What the hell? Why didn't they tell us sooner?" "I think they wanted to wait until the reunion was over," he said. "And they wanted us to hear it from each other first." I could feel my mind racing. My father had always been the pillar of our family, the strong, stoic figure who kept everything in place. The idea of my parents splitting felt like a dramatic plot twist in a movie I hadn't signed up for. As the day wore on, I tried to process what Mark had told me. Glancing around, I saw my parents engaging in playful banter, making it seem like everything was fine. Tablecloths were covered with food, laughter echoed around us like music, and yet all I could focus on was this new reality. I felt a lump in my throat every time I looked at them, so utterly unaware of the earthquake that was about to shake our world. While the sun dipped below the horizon, I gathered the courage to confront them. I pulled Mark toward them, our combined anxiety palpable as we approached. My parents were talking about the balloon animals my dad had just made for the kids. "Excuse me," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Can we talk for a minute?" The moment I said it, the smiles on their faces faded into curiosity. "Sure, honey." "What's up?" my mom asked, tilting her head. I took a deep breath. "Mark just told me about the divorce." A shadow crossed my dad's face, and he glanced at my mom, whose expression hardened. "You were not supposed to find out this way," he said, disappointment lacing his tone. "But we did." "How long were you planning on keeping this from us?" I felt my heart race, indignation bubbling up. "Yes, we should have told you earlier," Mom said, "but we hope to keep everything as normal as possible. Just for today. We didn't want to spoil this family gathering." "Normal?" I didn't mean to raise my voice, but the absurdity of it all took over. "You think pretending the ground isn't shaking helps? We deserve the truth, especially when it affects us in this way." Mark shifted uncomfortably beside me. "This isn't just about you two. It affects all of us. You're our parents. We should have been part of this conversation from the start." Dad ran a hand through his hair, looking more weary than angry, but I wasn't sure how to read him anymore. "Let's take a step back. I know how this feels, but we were trying to spare you the pain." I felt my vision blur briefly. "You think I won't be hurt if I don't know? Divorce isn't something you just hide from your kids. It's a life-altering decision, one we should have been involved in." Mom grabbed a napkin and wiped away some tears. "We did it because we love you both. We didn't want to create a rift when we could still share moments like this one." Mark threw his hands in the air. "You've created the rift, not us. This whole reunion feels like a lie now." "Please, just listen," Dad pleaded. "We had to think about our happiness too." I took a step back, my heart racing. "So what does that mean for us? For everything we've known?" "Nothing is going to change in the short term," Mom offered weakly, as if trying to convince herself. "We'll figure out the living situation, and we'll work together. We've been raising you two, teaching you values, and even with this change, we will still have family. Just different." Mark shook his head in disbelief. "You really think it'll be that simple? This isn't fair, and it's not just heartbreaking, it's life-altering." I looked down at the ground, feeling overwhelmed. The laughter and joy around me felt distant, as if I were watching a movie from behind glass. When did family mean so little to you? Don't you care about how this affects us?" Silence enveloped us, heavy like a fog. Mom looked at my dad, her eyes filled with questions, and I felt like I was intruding on a private moment. Then, breaking the storm, she whispered, "We do. We wish it were different. But sometimes love isn't enough." "Is that what this is about?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Do you not love each other anymore?" "It's complicated," Dad said, his expression torn. "We've grown apart, and it's not what either of us wanted. But it's our reality." My heart ached at the sight of my parents, once so vibrant together, now reduced to two people trapped in a quarrel they didn't want to face. "Are you still going to see each other?" Mark asked, almost timidly. Mom nodded slowly. "Of course. We'll work it out, but changes will happen. We don't need to make rash decisions overnight." I took a deep breath, wanting to scream, to somehow shake the foundations of their marriage as easily as they'd seemed to undo it. "But what about us?" was all I could manage. "We're still here," Dad said quietly. "And we will still be your parents no matter what." Hurt and anger flared within me. But it's not just about being parents anymore, it's about being a family, and this announcement, it's tearing that apart. Looking at their faces, half in sorrow, half resigned, I realized we weren't just facing family drama. We were dealing with the end of an era, and there was no going back. In a moment of frustration, I turned away from them, walking to the edge of the park where the last rays of sunlight danced on the water. Mark followed, the weight of silence, riding on our shoulders. "What the hell just happened?" he asked, breaking the stillness. "That was the last family reunion, I think," I muttered, crossing my arms. "What are we without them? If they can't figure it out, what hope do we have?" Mark leaned against a tree, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "We have each other. We need to redefine what family looks like now. It sucks." We stood in silence as emotions crashed over us like waves. The change was monumental, and we were standing amidst debris that used to be a solid family structure. Finally, I spoke, quieter this time. "It doesn't seem fair." "No, it doesn't," Mark replied. "But let's not turn every holiday into a battleground. We can still gather together and we can still love each other, right?" "I guess we'll have to," I whispered, my voice thick with vulnerability. As the sun descended, painting the sky with the colors of the evening, I felt the weight of uncertainty still resting upon my shoulders. But in that moment, my brother's presence anchored me. With the darkness creeping in, I realized that all I could do was take one day at a time. Family may have evolved, but love, unconditional and resolute, remained. Perhaps we could forge a new path, one built around resilience and understanding, and that, I decided, was the truest act of rebellion against the changes life threw our way. Aete for choosing my career over my relationship. I've always been one to prioritize my career. It's not that I don't value relationships, but the truth is, my career has been my dream since I was a teenager. I've sacrificed countless nights, weekends, and even friendships to get to where I am today. I'm a 28-year-old graphic designer at a reputable agency in a big city, and I'm proud of what I've accomplished. But I never imagined how much that pride would cost me. Let's rewind to 6 months ago. I had been dating Jake for almost 2 years. He was charming, supportive, and believed in me. We had a solid relationship built on mutual respect and attraction. But from the beginning, he made it clear that he wanted someone who could give time to the relationship. He was a freelance writer with a more laid-back approach to work, and while I admired his passion, I also saw the stark contrast in how we approached life. After a long stint at my job, I was finally presented with an incredible opportunity. The boss, creative director, was leaving, and the spot was open for anyone who wanted to apply. As soon as I learned about it, I knew I had to go for it. This was a once-in-a-lifetime chance to advance my career and take on new challenges, and I was ready to commit to the long hours and relentless work it would take. When I told Jake about the promotion, his reaction was not what I had hoped for. "I can't believe you're considering sacrificing everything for a job. What if it doesn't even pay off?" he said, his voice edged with disappointment. I need to chase this, Jake, I replied firmly. You know how important my career is to me. I know, but can it wait? You're already doing well. Why not just enjoy what you have? I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. It stung when he dismissed the hard work I'd put in to get to my current position. This is not just about the money, I countered. It's about my ambition and growth. He sighed deeply, frustration seeping into his words. I just don't want to be second place in your life. That was the crux of it. He wanted more time, more connection, but I was determined to improve myself professionally. We agreed to disagree that night, but it began a series of tense conversations over the next few weeks. I threw myself into preparing for the interview, working late nights, and staying up early to fine-tune my portfolio. This new position would mean more responsibility and potentially a significant leap in my salary. I felt invincible. But with every late hour, Jake grew more distant, and our relationship became strained. He started missing our weekend outings, telling me he had a piece to write, or that he needed to work on his own goals. I understood the importance of ambition, but a part of me wished he would understand mine as well. Then came the week of the interview. I'd spent sleepless nights rehearsing and perfecting my portfolio, preparing every possible question they might throw at me. The day arrived, and I stepped into the sleek conference room filled with executives. There was an intoxicating mix of nerves and excitement, and when I walked out after it was done, I felt that surge of adrenaline. Success was at my fingertips. I rushed home to share the news with Jake, eager to celebrate what felt like a monumental step in my life. But when I walked into our apartment, he was sitting on the couch with a forlorn expression. I could tell something was off. I got the job, I exclaimed, barely letting him register my excitement. That's amazing, he said flatly, but I could see the shadow behind his eyes. But we really need to talk. I plummeted from the high of success to the anxiety of a hard conversation, a sensation I'd become all too familiar with. What's wrong? I asked, my heart racing. He hesitated, picking at invisible lint on his jeans. I feel like I'm losing you. You've been so focused on your job that I barely see you anymore. I thought we were going to build a life together, but instead, you're just living for your career. I wanted to defend myself, to explain that this was my moment, but deep down, I felt the lingering fear that perhaps he was right. I love you, Jake, I finally said, my voice softer. But this opportunity is important to me. It doesn't mean I love you any less. It feels like you just love your job more, he replied, the hurt evident in his tone. The conversation turned into a heated argument, a back and forth of passionate pleas and accusations. We went in circles, and it ended with him storming out, leaving me alone with my thoughts. 2 days later, I received the official job offer, and while I should have been leaping with joy, I felt a sense of emptiness when I realized I would be celebrating this success alone. As I settled into my new role, I couldn't shake the memories of Jake. My days were filled with meetings, brainstorming sessions, and a whirlwind of creative projects that fueled my passion. But every evening was marked by a gnawing loneliness. I tried reaching out to him, sending messages filled with snippets of enthusiasm, but he was cold, responding with curt replies that made it clear he was still navigating his own hurt. I'll never forget that one night when I came home late, exhausted. I expected to find Jake sitting on the couch waiting to talk things through, but he wasn't there. After looking around the apartment, I noticed a note on the kitchen counter. I need space to think. I hope you can understand. The world outside moved on as I sat in silence, my heart heavy. I tossed and turned all night, filled with regret and resentment, unable to determine if I was right or wrong. Had I made a selfish decision, or was I simply following my dreams? It gnawed at me as days turned into weeks, and the silence from Jake only deepened my sorrow. Eventually, I had to confront the inevitable reality. I missed him. One evening, after finally getting the courage to reach out, we agreed to meet at our favorite cafe. My heart raced as I walked in, scanning the tables until I spotted him in a corner, fingers wrapped around a coffee cup, brows furrowed in thought. "Hey," I breathed, sliding into the seat across from him. Hey, he replied, his voice flat, but his gaze flickered with uncertainty. I've missed you, I admitted truthfully, feeling the ache of absence. I've missed you too, but we need to talk about what happened, Jake said, his tone suddenly firm, yet laced with hesitation. I know I've been distant, I started, unable to stave off the guilt bubbling inside me. But I feel like I'm finally doing something I've always wanted. I didn't mean to push you away, Jake sighed deeply, his expression softening just a little. I'm glad you got the job. You deserve it. I never wanted to come off as unsupportive, but I felt like I was getting lost in your ambition. His words struck a chord, revealing the reality I had been blind to in pursuit of my career. Every late night and missed connection had created a chasm between us. I see that now. I regret letting my ambition overshadow everything we had. I just want to matter to you, he replied, vulnerability creeping into his voice. What we had was special, and I don't want to lose it. I felt heat welling up in my eyes. You matter to me, Jake, but I didn't know how to balance it all. Maybe I still don't. We fell into a contemplative silence, both searching for the right words to tie the frayed edges of our relationship. Maybe we can find some middle ground, Jake suggested finally. It just feels like we both need to commit to what we are building together. I can do that, I acknowledged, tears spilling over. I want us to work. I just need you to understand how much this job means to me. After a thoughtful pause, he nodded. Then let's work on it. I love you enough to try. And there it was, a flicker of hope tethered by honesty. In the ensuing weeks, we learned to navigate our altered dynamic. Sacrifices were made on both ends. I adjusted my hours to accommodate our relationship while Jake reminded himself that my passion didn't diminish my affection for him. But the road wasn't straightforward. I found myself falling into old patterns, making cliches about working late that only persisted in our tension-filled dynamics. It was when I received a promotion just a month later that I realized my work-life balance was still heavily skewed. Emboldened with this newfound title, I dove deeper into my career, frequently neglecting our weekend plans or romantic dinners. The weight of my success felt like it was pushing Jake further and further away. Finally, one night after yet another missed date, we had a confrontation that felt like the boiling point of all of our struggles. "You're doing it again!" he exclaimed, his face flushed with frustration. "It's like I don't matter anymore." He was right. I hesitated, not knowing how to articulate my feelings. I just thought this was the next step. I thought we could grow together. "Grow together?" he echoed incredulously. "This isn't growth when you're dragging me along and pretending like everything is fine when it isn't. I feel like I'm losing you every single day." The truth behind those words shook me. I loved him, yet ambition had clouded my vision. I considered my next words cautiously. Then maybe we need to rethink things, what we want. If this is causing you so much pain, then I don't want it too. I want you to be happy too. We both knew the delicate road we walked. I stood at a crossroads. Would I choose my career over love? Was it an either-or situation? Over the following days, the thought played in my head like a haunting melody. After deep reflection and friendly advice from those I trusted, I made up my mind. I invited Jake for a walk in the park where we had spent countless afternoons. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," I began, struggling to find the right way to convey my thoughts. I realized that while my career is important, you and our relationship mean more to me than a job. Jake's expression shifted, hope piercing through the clouds of doubt. What do you mean?" "I don't want us to be in this constant tug of war. I'm willing to take a step back and redefine some of my goals so we can build something beautiful together," I said, searching for validation in his eyes. He smiled, though hesitant. "You mean that? You're really willing to put us first?" "Absolutely," I replied, feeling a surge of determination. "I want to invest in the relationship we've nurtured together. I just need your patience as I reconcile my drive with what we have." With a fragile sense of understanding, we slowly started redefining ourselves, setting healthy boundaries around work and emphasizing our dedication to one another. Over weeks, we reconnected as if exploring uncharted territory, making room for each other amidst the buzz of my newfound responsibilities. As I learned to balance, the love between us blossomed again. Together, we began sharing goals and visions. Conversations shifted from selfish ambition to dreams crafted for two. We transformed our lives seamlessly, embracing both individual ambitions and collective dreams. I made time for weekend getaways, movie nights, and surprise coffee runs. Each moment was a cherished reminder of the love we fought to cultivate amidst chaos. The journey was not easy, but it was essential. I realized prioritizing my career didn't mean abandoning love, it meant embracing the challenge of merging both worlds. And someday, through all the highs and lows, we'd manage to build a life that honored both work and love, because love thrives in knowing we are stronger together than apart. As I sit here today, pen in hand, writing about the choices we made and the paths we forged, I recognize that this journey isn't just about being right or wrong, it's a universal tale of learning, compromise, and growth. We all find ourselves at crossroads, torn between ambition and relationships, and I now understand that we can traverse those paths if we have love and patience as our guide. ATA for choosing my career over my relationship? Maybe, but by choosing both, I learned the true essence of what it means to live fully, harmoniously in pursuit of our dreams. ATA for wanting to leave my apt. After my roommate's transformation, my story began on a typical Tuesday morning. The sun spilled golden light through my bedroom window, casting warm squares onto the hardwood floor. I stretched out, fought sleep off for a moment longer, and then propelled myself into the routine that had defined my life for the past 8 months. After graduating from college, I'd secured a decent job in digital marketing and was lucky enough to land an affordable apartment in a neighborhood I adored. The only drawback? My roommate Megan and I had been great friends back in college, and it was this friendship that had prompted me to choose her as my roommate. But there was something I hadn't accounted for: her ability to change. It all started 1 month after we moved in together. At first, it was small things: newfound fervor for yoga, experimenting with vegan recipes, and an obsession with wellness influencers on Instagram. I was supportive. I loved seeing her try new things, but deep down I couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting in the air between us. Then came the day when she announced with excitement that she'd signed up for a retreat to really dive deep into self-discovery. I remember smirking at her enthusiasm. "Isn't that for people trying to find themselves?" I joked. She laughed, but her eyes sparkled in a way that made me wonder if there was more beneath her surface. When Megan got back from the retreat, she was different. She brought home a sobering intensity that filled our apartment. She switched from coffee to herbal teas and replaced Netflix binges with hours of meditation. Her laughter became less frequent, replaced by long talks about the universe and vibes. At first, I was willing to embrace this new version of her. I joined her in meditation sessions and even dabbled in her new vegan meals, though I did miss our late-night pizza orders. Weeks turned into months, and I noticed the broader strokes of her transformation taking a toll. Social gatherings dwindled. Friends from our college days began to drift. Whenever I suggested inviting people over, I faced a tidal wave of resistance. "They won't understand me anymore," she'd say, her expression a mixture of regret and resolve. I tried to remain supportive, reminding myself that everyone goes through changes, but as the summer sun shifted into autumn, the feeling of isolation seeped into my bones. I would find myself stepping into the living room to an aroma of incense, where Megan sat cross-legged on the floor, her voice steady as she recited phrases monologued from her latest book on mindfulness. Meanwhile, I couldn't shake the feeling that my thoughts were stuck in a previously familiar but now unappealing place. The final straw came on an uneventful Saturday night. I was lounging on the couch in a hoodie and sweats, a documentary about true crime flickering on the screen, when Megan settled in next to me, her face glowing from the candlelight. "What are you watching?" she asked, her tone slightly condescending. Just something about the Zodiac killer, I replied with a shrug. Her face twisted. You know those things are just feeding into negativity, right? I think there's power in focusing on, positivity and intention. She leaned closer, a piercing seriousness in her gaze. At that moment, the wall that had formed between us solidified in my mind. The world is a complicated place, Meg. You can't pretend darkness doesn't exist, I responded, frustration bubbling to the surface. Maybe you can't see it, but I'm beginning to find that choosing light is the path. I inhaled, deeply, noting the hurt in her words. You know I love you, right? I admire your passion. But can't we find a balance? But every time I brought up balance, it seemed she interpreted it as judgment. I felt less like her roommate and more like a relic of her past. My need for social interaction, shared meals, or friendly debates seemed to far outweigh the routine of mindful meditation and raw food diets. We were living in a constant state of misalignment. Weeks passed in this dismal tension, and finally, I reached my breaking point. One rainy evening, I decided to discuss the matter directly. I took a deep breath and started. I think we need to talk about how things are between us. What's there to talk about? She replied defensively, her fingers toying with the energy crystals she'd recently acquired. You, us, our lives together. I don't feel like we're on the same page anymore. Her brows furrowed, but I pressed ahead. You've been so focused on this path you've chosen, but it feels like you're leaving me behind. I miss talking about life with you, the fun stuff. Suddenly, her posture shifted. You can't just expect me to revert back to who I was, Claire. That person isn't me anymore. Maybe I've simply outgrown you. The words hit with a chilling finality, and I sat there, stunned. Please don't say that. I want us to grow together. But it doesn't seem like you want that anymore. Maybe I don't want to bring that part of my life back into the mix. She crossed her arms tightly, as if guarding herself from further conversation. In a flash, I was overwhelmed by the harsh realization that I had unintentionally become a burden on my friend. I spent weeks contemplating this new reality, and the more I mulled it over, the clearer it became. Our lives were moving in vastly different directions, and maybe it was time I acknowledged it. The next day, I reduced my feelings into a chaotic whirlpool of thoughts on paper. I scribbled a list of what I sought in life: connections, laughter, fun, the very essence of who I was. I penned down, "You're blossoming while I feel like I'm withering," and the words seemed to resonate. Beneath the scratchy pen marks lay my heavy heart cradled by grief. For a week I tiptoed through discussions with friends, letting hints of my dissatisfaction seep into conversations. As they all leaned in to listen, I wondered if this was what I had been craving. Acknowledgement that I wasn't the crazy one. But as my friends guided me through these mazes of emotion, that familiar flicker of hope illuminated my heart. I wasn't imagining our differences. We were fundamentally different people at this point in life. On a Saturday afternoon, I sprinted to the park that was a stone's throw from our apartment, letting the changing autumn leaves blanket me in color. Breathless from exertion, I settled down on a bench, pulled out my phone, and started drafting my post on Reddit. It felt like the final piece of the puzzle was falling into place. Aita for wanting to leave my situation with a roommate who's evolving into someone I hardly recognize, I typed my heart out, summing up the chaotic whirlwind of feelings, Megan's transformation, the distance that had emerged, and my own desire for balance. I hit post and anxiously waited for the response. As I sorted through upvotes and comments, relief washed over me. Hundreds of users supported my feeling of being dismissed. A multitude shared their personal experiences. Some had faced similar situations with family, others with friends. Someone even wrote, "Don't remain in someone else's shadow. Your happiness matters too." After reading the comments for a few hours, a newfound clarity dawned on me. I would confront Megan. I wouldn't implore her to abandon her choices, but I would make it clear that I valued my own journey, one that included laughter, friends, and the spark of shared moments. By the time I returned home, the sun was starting to dip low in the sky, casting a warm glow over the living room. I found Megan curled up on the couch, her playlist of meditation music playing softly in the background. "Can we talk?" I said, my pulse racing in my throat. She nodded gingerly, curiosity written all over her face. With all the passion I felt building inside, I laid it all on the table. "Megan, I've grown to understand that it's okay for us to be different, but I can't keep pretending that I'm okay with being sidelined in your vision of life." "Well, what are you suggesting?" Her eyes sparked. I could sense the eagerness for an explanation. "I think it might be best for both of us if I found a new place. I want you to thrive on your journey, but I can't just disappear from my own, feeling like a stranger in my own home." My heart pounded between hope and dread as I waited for her response. She held my gaze for a moment, and I could see her mind racing behind those usually calm eyes. "I get that," she said finally, her voice much softer. "But you've been my friend for so long. Is this really what you want?" "More than anything, it's what I need. I'm still here for you, and I hope you're here for me. But it may have to be from a distance. I can't pretend this is working anymore," I said, my voice quaking yet firm. Her lip quivered as she nodded slowly. "I can't really fight your desire to live fully. It's just hard to let go of what we once had." We embraced, a bittersweet acknowledgement of our friendship transforming but not completely shattering. In time, I found a new apartment and made connections throughout the city. Surprisingly, once I settled in, I didn't feel lonely. I felt liberated, voids filled with laughter again. Open discussions replaced heated debates, and every conversation reminded me of my worth. It took time, but I learned that letting go didn't mean losing. To me, it marked the beginning of space where I could draw renewed confidence into my life. Sometimes a friend's transformation could lead you to discover your own, and in that light I found my way shining clearer than ever. The takeaway? Sometimes it's not about pointing fingers or affixing blame. It's about recognizing when two souls have started to drift and understanding that it's okay to sail towards your own horizon. And for that newfound wisdom, I will always be grateful to Megan. I never thought I'd find myself typing out my life's biggest drama on Reddit, but here I am. The Am I the Asshole forum is buzzing with opinions, and I feel like it might help to get this off my chest. Perhaps society's judgment will guide my own understanding of the mess I'm in. So let me backtrack. I'm Leo, a 29-year-old marketing manager, and I live alone in a small but cozy apartment in downtown Chicago. I'm not sure when it happened, but my life has turned into an awkward juggling act between expectations, disappointments, and a big old dollop of guilt. My friends often joke that I'm the adultier adult of our group, the one with a steady job, a reliable car, and a seemingly secure life. But like every perfect Instagram shot, things aren't always as they seem. It all started on my birthday 3 months ago. I threw a small gathering at my place, just a handful of friends. Among them was Claire, my high-strung, perfectionist friend, who has a flair for drama and a knack for stepping over boundaries. She's smart, ambitious, and always wearing a designer outfit, but she also has a way of making everything about her. That night, as we sat around the kitchen table, dessert plates half empty, the conversation turned serious. Claire suddenly announced that she had accepted an offer to move to New York City for a job promotion. The entire room fell silent except for the sound of crickets from the balcony. I watched her face light up with joy, while the rest of us exchanged glances filled with concern. We all knew what this move meant, not just for her, but for us. Claire was not just a friend, she was the glue binding our group. Losing her to the Big Apple felt like losing a piece of ourselves. As the awkward silence stretched, I felt I had to say something, anything, to keep the depth of her excitement in check. "Wait, are you really going to do this? What about the agency we've been working on together?" I asked, masking my turmoil with forced cheer. Maybe I shouldn't have brought it up. Was I just being selfish? Claire's smile faltered. "It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Leo. You know that." "But come on. The agency needs you. I need you. We were on the verge of something big, I insisted, trying to jiggle her enthusiasm back to reality. That's when she snapped, her usual calm demeanor shattered. It's not all about you, Leo. I have my own life to lead. Maybe instead of trying to pull me back, you should think about what makes you happy. The look of betrayal that shot through me confused me. I had never meant to put her in a position to feel guilty, but I wasn't ready to let go either. The group's energy shifted palpably as the laughter diminished and uncertainty washed over us. Later that night, as I lay in bed, replaying the evenings, events in my head, I realized that somewhere beneath my jealousy, buried in my insecurities, I was genuinely happy for her. But I also felt a gnawing fear that her departure would fracture our tightly knit friendship. A month later, Claire moved. We talked and texted regularly, but it wasn't the same. She had immersed herself into her new life, going out with new colleagues, experiencing New York's nightlife, while I was stuck in my apartment, scrolling through her Instagram, my finger hovering over the like button, watching her live the life I sometimes yearned for. It felt like she was soaring, and I was grounded with all my disappointments. Then came the day when I received a text from her asking if we could video chat. I felt excitement bubble within me, a fleeting reminder of the friendship we once shared. We set a date for that Friday evening. When the time came, I was a bundle of nerves. "Can you see me?" Claire asked, her face bright on the screen, her ombre hair cascading perfectly down her shoulders. My inside squirmed with both joy and unexpected pain at the sight of her. "Yeah, you look great," I replied, not entirely sure how I felt about her picture-perfect life. As we chatted about her new job and life, I couldn't help but feel envious. I found myself asking questions that implied I had everything under control when I really didn't. But then she said something that shifted the tone of our conversation. "Leo, the big launch is tomorrow, and I want you to know you were a big part of it. I wouldn't be here without your help," she confessed, her eyes sparkling. "You really pushed me to take that leap." The weight of her words caught me off guard. Inside, I wanted to tear down the acknowledgement, but my tongue stayed in check. I looked down at my hands, suddenly feeling small. "Thanks, but you earned this opportunity. You've always been at the forefront," I said, trying to sound supportive while my insides twisted as the envy festered within me. As our chat ended, she made a point of scheduling weekly video calls. I was relieved and grateful, but the green-eyed monster loomed large. It wasn't long before those feelings seeped into my daily life, affecting my mood, buckling my motivation, and stretching my tolerance for Claire's small triumphs over my trivial grumbles. It reached a tipping point when she sent out an invitation for a virtual celebration of her job's success. I should have been excited for her, yet my fingers hovered over the RSVP button for what felt like hours. Another reminder of how my life seemed, well, dull. Finally, I hit decline. I couldn't take it anymore. My mood plummeted into a spiral of resentment as I pondered how my life had seemingly stagnated while she was flourishing. That's when it happened. I decided to confide in my friend Mia. I thought sharing my feelings would help, but instead, it all spiraled even more. "Leo, you're being selfish. Claire deserves support. You should really take a step back and think about how she feels," Mia said, crossing her arms. "She's your friend." "You don't understand," I argued, my voice rising. "Every time I see her succeed, I feel less and less worthy. It's like I'm constantly measuring myself against her." Mia sighed, rolling her eyes with impatience. "That's not her fault. You need to figure out why you're so competitive. It's not a contest." But as the tension mounted in the room, my emotions twisted into rage. Maybe if I had a better life, I wouldn't feel so small. I'm tired of being the supportive friend. I watched as Mia stepped back, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and pity. After a moment, she shook her head and left the cafe, leaving me alone with my spiraling thoughts. That night, I decided to send Claire a message, a half-hearted apology mixed with unvoiced resentment. In hindsight, I don't even recall the specifics, but the essence was clear. I felt overshadowed. Her reply was quick, concise, and mostly diplomatic. I hope you can find joy in your own accomplishments. We're still friends, Leo. I was devastated. I snapped back. It's hard to be joyful when I feel like a side character in my own life. I pressed send before I could rethink my words. A wave of regret washed over me instantly, but it was too late. The words were out there, hanging in the ether between us. Claire's response came after what felt like an eternity. What exactly do you want from me? I'm thrilled for my accomplishments, but can't control how that makes you feel. You don't have to let my success undermine your worth. As those words seeped through my screen, the impact hit me hard. I had let my jealousy consume my narrative. In attempting to vent, I'd inadvertently hurt someone I cared about. Feeling regretful and vulnerable, I spent the next few sleepless nights pondering my actions. It wasn't long before I stumbled upon the "Am I the Asshole?" subreddit, and that's when I decided to share my story. And now, as I type, I still feel the weight of my actions. I know I'm not entirely the villain. I'm not proud of what I did. I just want to make sense of this swirling tempest of emotions. I'm sure I let Claire down, but why does it sting? Like this? It's a tough realization when you recognize that your frustrations may have roots in your own insecurities. The responses began flooding in, some sympathetic, others critical. I read and processed the advice while clutching my chest, anxiously wondering if anyone else had felt the way I did. In the end, I knew what I needed to do. I had to confront Claire once more, not with the fingers of a keyboard, but face to face, and put it all out there. My jealousy, my fears, my shortcomings, and my desire to support her authentically, even if that meant accepting my feelings of inadequacy. It was well past midnight when I typed the message. It read, "Can we talk? I need to apologize." As I hit send, I felt a flicker of hope, a chance to rebuild what I had almost shattered. It felt like the beginning of reclaiming my narrative, one where I could be Leo and Claire could be Claire, both successful in our rights. The reply came in minutes. "Anytime, Leo, I miss my friend." And suddenly I felt lighter, ready to transform the drama into a bridge, one that could lead us to a better place, away from the shadows of jealousy and into the light of friendship.